Story recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a fantasy and horror film called The Headhunter. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The coldness in the man's eyes complements the freezing temperature surrounding him. Father finally snaps back to reality and breathes heavily to warm himself up. A branch breaking catches his attention, making him wary of his surroundings. An alarm system made up of string and bones rustles at the touch of a creature. It then crosses the boundary. He anticipates the creature with a sword in hand, meeting it halfway. The sounds of slicing and the creature howling echo throughout the forest. He returns, and his daughter calls out to him. Father kneels to comfort his freezing daughter. He realizes the blood in his hand that's been transferred to her coat. Time passes, and a tragedy occurs. A monster kills his daughter, and since then, he has sought revenge. His home is now filled with a collection of heads, but he has yet to sever the head of his daughter's killer. A lonely night arrives, and Father sits by the fire reciting his prayer. He harvests innards from a creature and awaits to eat one roasting by the fire. Morning comes, and he pulls a creature's skull into his shack's balcony. Father retrieves a fish stuck in the eye socket, and he releases the skull back into the depths. Using tongs, Father drops the fish into a mixture that instantly dissolves it. He starts producing an orange powder. He then grabs small bones and spits at his knife, incorporating all the ingredients together. Meanwhile, the squeaking window knocks over a jar of powder. After preparing the dry components, Father exits the shack to tend his cauldron, which contains a boiling dark liquid. He pours the hot mixture through a filter into jars. He locks them in place and leaves them to ferment. Outside, he sits on a block of wood and admires the beauty of his surroundings. He talks to his daughter's grave and offers her a metal arrowhead. Legend says that the arrowhead can carry souls to the afterlife, but Father doesn't believe in it. After some time, squeaking from the window disturbs Father's siesta. Feeling frustrated, he cuts off wood and tries fixing it. He then stops as he hears horns blaring from the castle. The horns are a sign that a king's order has been sent for him to accomplish. With his helmet on, Father rides away to accept his mission. Later that day, Father falls off his horse and makes his way inside, throwing a sack into the floor. He bleeds as he makes his way to the mixture he prepared. Father removes his armor and helmet and opens up the jar. He applies the medicine to his mauled shoulder and screams in pain. His eyes almost pop out of their sockets as he feels relief. A new day arrives, and the window squeaking persists. Father awakens, he unsheaths his blade and uses it as a mirror. His wounds have miraculously healed, and he recoups his strength. He stands and flips through his diary, inserting another completed order from the king. He has completed countless bounties, but he is yet to encounter his daughter's killer. He stashes his loot and looks over to a bloody sack. Inside it is a severed head of a white ape. He displays it on his wall and smirks as he adds another skull to his collection. Later that day, he ties his horse down on a tree and starts hammering on a new chest plate in his outpost. After that, he retrieves a creature caught in his trap. Night arrives, and Father sleeps soundly in his home. His eyes open as the squeaks of the window mask the shriek of a creature outside. Menacing eyes watch his home. With a determined look, Father grabs his battle axe. The sounds of the leaves rustling get replaced by Father's grunts as he starts hacking the creature. The following day, he erects the creature's head stuck through a pole to warn potential unwanted visitors. Father kneels by a stream to drink some water, and a dragon flies above him. Back home, the horn calls out for his aid again. He sharpens a piece of wood and hammers it to the wall, preparing to add another head to his collection. He grabs his belongings and rides off on his horse. Evening comes, and he returns home, less injured than before. He lights up his fireplace and pulls out a wolf's head from the bag. He sticks it into the wall and opens up another jar of the mixture. He sits on his throne, removes his helmet, and reveals his mangled face. Father applies the medicine, and he bears the pain much easier. He closes his eyes and drifts off to sleep. A pool of blood accumulates on the wood flooring, and Father wakes up with new scars. He moves the bucket to catch the blood from his most recent prey. Outside, he hangs his horse's bridle on a tree where a horseshoe rests on one of the branches. Later that day, he carves out a wooden figurine of his horse. He makes his way to his daughter's grave and informs her that his horse is dead. Another horn blares from the castle. Father cusses in frustration as it seems he has no time to rest. Back at home, he starts hammering another spike but gets pricked. He walks to the castle, leaving the stake with his blood dripping. Arriving at a tree, Father inspects an arrow with a piece of parchment. He then sees the archer in a white robe returning to the castle. He reads the bounty, and he runs toward his daughter's grave. The monster that killed her daughter returns, and Father thirsts for vengeance. He starts his journey passing various biomes. After a long walk, Father reaches a hill where a skeleton rests, foreshadowing the dangers ahead. He camps out the night with the skeleton, and he feasts on some meat. Father talks to the pile of bones and asks what killed it. He shares about the oath he made to his daughter, and in the distance, a faint silhouette of the monster is seen. Morning comes, and Father continues on his journey. He arrives at the edge of the waters overlooking an island enveloped in mist and darkness. In the depths of the cave, a monstrous howling echoes out. Another day arrives, and a bloody sack along with an injured father falls to the ground. He removes his helmet, whimpering as coldness and injuries take a toll on his body. Later that day he bathes in the river, revealing that he suffered no significant injuries. Night arrives, and he returns to camp out with his skeleton friend. He drags his feet, and with every step, fatigue catches up to him. He remembers his daughter and gathers the strength to return home. Finally, he reaches his home, realizing how much he misses his horse. Father immediately reports to his daughter and says that he has now fulfilled his oath. The window continues to squeak, spilling a jar of the mixture on the workbench. The liquid drips, flowing down the cabinets and to the sack containing the monster's head. The sack starts moving, and a spine sticks out. He returns home to see the head gone. He grabs the jar and scoops out the mixture with his knife. He drops it on a dead spider, and it resurrects before his eyes. He curses under his breath and smashes the spider. However, the spider lives. Night arrives, and Father prepares for the hunt. Outside, a monster stalks within the shadows, whispering the word body. It starts crawling to Father's shack. Father exits with a torch in hand to look for the monster. He takes every step with caution, straying farther and farther away from his shack. He unsheaths his blade as he sees the sack. He pierces it and holds it up close to inspect. Suddenly, the door opens. Father enters the home, checking every corner. He hears a faint sound, and the view from his helmet hinders his sight. He rushes to the balcony, and as he turns, he sees the monster, who dives into the river. He leaves to chase it while something tugs the rope. It stops moving, and the monster crawls out the depths, bringing with it the skull tied to the rope. Father continues his pursuits. The light from his torch is a mere speck surrounded by the dark of night. The monster's hisses are now accompanied by footsteps. Father starts waving his torch as his anxiety grows. But then, he hears a trap that's been set off. The monster struggles but escapes, resuming its search for a body. He discovers the trap and sees the skull from his rope. Father finally arrives at the terrifying realization of the horror he's truly up against. Father rushes to his daughter's grave as he figures out that the monster is searching for a body. In the grave, a skeleton's hand starts to move. Father sees the dug-up grave empty. Meanwhile, the monster begins to reconstruct itself with the daughter's bones. He arrives at a stream that leads deeper into the woods. The monster now whispers the word, Father. Due to the tight passage, Father sheathes his sword, removes his armor, and grabs his axe, journeying farther into the tunnel. A skeleton surprises him, and he smacks it with his torch, putting out the flame. He tries to light it again but fails. The word Father echoes throughout, provoking him to go deeper into the darkness. Further in, Father stops to observe his surroundings, and only the water droplets from the cave ceilings can be heard. Suddenly, the monster reveals itself and latches onto him. With his bare hands, he strangles it, pulling the spine out of her daughter's bones. The monster wraps its cord around Father and constricts him. He removes his helmet and grabs a blade from his belt. With every stab, blood splatters on his face. Finally, the monster ceases to resist. Father sighs in relief and retrieves his daughter's remains. Morning arrives, and he sets his daughter's corpse with blooming flowers. He returns home and leaves the head outside. He grabs his axe and smashes the monster to ensure its death. Father returns to the grave, reburies his daughter. And with every layer of dirt he brushes in, he's reminded of the time he would cover her daughter with a coat. Finally, her body, along with her soul, peacefully rests. The metal arrowhead presents itself underneath the soil. Father chops up some wood and creates an arrow with it. He aims it at the sky, closes his eyes, and fires. The arrow lands on a rotting creature. He finally fulfills the oath and returns home. He passes through the still squeaking window. Then suddenly, a faint noise of struggling and flesh being ripped apart is heard. Father enters the home, oddly stepping his way in. He sticks another head into the stake he prepared, adding himself to the collection. The monster now inhabits his body and walks away with a jar of the mixture. The father attributes revenge to his desire to give his daughter peace. When in fact, the father does it for himself as a means to bury away his self-loathing for letting her die. As he goes on repetitive quests to kill monsters, he loses what's important to him little by little, scar by scar. Then finally, he encounters the monster who killed his daughter, getting the opportunity to end his endless pursuit. However, his own meticulous preparations defeat him. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.